A multi-billion-dollar deal was dying, thanks to the CEO's arrogance, but he never saw the quiet data analyst who was about to save the company, and in doing so, take everything from him. The air in the boardroom was so thick with tension you could have cut it with one of our company's overpriced laser-etched letter openers. At the head of the mahogany table sat Mr. Sterling, our CEO, a man whose silver hair was matched only by the silver of his tongue and the cold, hard glint in his eyes. He wasn't just the CEO, he was the company's living, breathing embodiment of arrogance. He had a way of looking at you that made you feel like you were a smudge on the otherwise pristine glass of his life. We were in crisis mode. The Koyama Corp deal, a partnership that was supposed to catapult us into the global stratosphere, was crumbling. For weeks, negotiations with the Tokyo-based tech giant had been stalling, and now they were threatening to walk. This meeting was Sterling's last-ditch effort to find someone to blame before the Japanese delegation arrived for one final, probably disastrous, sit-down. For the last time, Sterling's voice sliced through the silence. Can anyone tell me why they're offended? We've offered them everything they asked for. Our translators are the best in the business. What is the problem? He scanned the room, his eyes landing on Mark, our head of international relations. Mark, a man with 20 years of experience, visibly shrank. Sir, as we've discussed, there seems to be a cultural disconnect. Their emails have become increasingly formal and distant. They feel we are not showing the proper respect. Sterling scoffed, a disgusting, wet sound. Respect? We're offering them a controlling stake in the biggest tech merger of the decade. That's respect spelled M-O-N-E-Y. What else is there? I kept my head down, focusing on the tablet in front of me. I was Nia, a junior data analyst. My presence in this high-level meeting was a fluke. I was only here to run the revenue projection models on the big screen if asked. I was a ghost, a number cruncher, and that's how Sterling saw me, if he saw me at all. In his world, a 24-year-old black woman from the data department was just part of the furniture. But I knew the problem. I'd seen it. Out of sheer curiosity, I'd asked for the raw email exchanges, both the original Japanese and our expert translations. My dad was Air Force, and I spent 12 years of my life growing up on a base in Okinawa. I didn't just speak Japanese, I dreamed in it. I understood the nuances, the honorifics, the delicate dance of politeness and implication that our brutishly literal translations had completely butchered. We hadn't just been disrespectful, we'd been insulting. We'd been addressing their esteemed CEO, Koyama-san, with the casualness you'd use for a new intern. My heart hammered against my ribs. Speaking up here was career suicide. Sterling was known for firing people for making eye contact for too long. But watching Mark get verbally flayed, watching this multi-billion-dollar deal die because of sheer pig-headed ignorance, I couldn't stay silent. My hand went up, a small, hesitant motion. Sterling's eyes snapped to me. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. Well, look at this. The numbers girl has a thought. Please, enlighten us. The entire room turned to stare. I felt a hot flush creep up my neck. Mr. Sterling, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. The problem isn't the offer, it's the translation. The translation? He leaned back, thoroughly amused. We pay a top firm 6 figures a year for their services. You, a data analyst, think you know better. Yes, sir. I do, I said, my courage surging. For example, in the last email, our response used Koyama-san's name without his proper title. And our phrasing, which translates literally as we demand a swift response, would be received as incredibly aggressive. It's the equivalent of shouting at him. We've been culturally bulldozing them for weeks. A dangerous quiet fell over the room. Sterling's amusement evaporated, replaced by a dark, simmering rage. He stood up, planting his palms on the table. Are you telling me that my entire international relations team and a world-class translation service are all incompetent, but you, a girl who's probably never left the state, have it all figured out? I grew up in Japan, sir. I'm fluent. The words hung in the air. Sterling just stared at me, his face turning a shade of purple I'd never seen before. He saw a young black woman, and his brain simply couldn't compute the words fluent in Japanese. He saw it as a lie, a pathetic attempt at grabbing the spotlight. "Fluent," he repeated, his voice dripping with venomous sarcasm. "Right. I'll tell you what, Miss, whatever your name is. The Japanese delegation will be here in 15 minutes. They're coming to kill the deal. You think you can save it? With your magical fluency?" I squared my shoulders. "Yes, sir. I believe I can." He let out a bark of a laugh. It was a sound completely devoid of humor. He was a cornered animal, and he was about to lash out. "Okay," he said, a manic gleam in his eyes. "Okay, let's make this interesting. You go in there, you talk to them. If you single-handedly save this deal, I will resign. I will walk out of this office and you can have my job, for all I care." The executives around the table gasped. He was bluffing, of course, a theatrical display of dominance. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I looked him dead in the eye. "And if I fail, I'll resign and you'll never hear from me again. But if I succeed, I want your offer in writing." The entire room froze. The silence was absolute. Sterling's jaw tightened. He had just tried to humiliate me in front of his entire leadership team, and I had just turned his empty power play into a binding contract. He couldn't back down now without looking like a coward. His eyes were burning holes into me. With a jerky, furious motion, he snatched a pen and a company letterhead notepad from the center of the table. He scribbled a few angry lines, tore the sheet off, and shoved it across the table at me. It read, "If Nia Williams successfully secures the Koyama Corp deal today, I, James Sterling, will tender my immediate resignation as CEO." He'd signed it with a vicious slash. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket just as the double doors to the boardroom swung open. A petite, impeccably dressed Japanese woman, his lead assistant, stepped in and bowed. Behind her stood 3 older gentlemen with expressions like stone. The lead, a man with sharp eyes and an aura of immense authority, had to be Koyama-san himself. His assistant looked at Mr. Sterling and began to speak in formal, clipped Japanese. "Sterling-san, Koyama-sama is prepared to give his final statement. He wishes to express his profound disappointment." But before she could finish, before Sterling could even open his mouth to offer a useless apology, all 4 of the Japanese delegates' eyes landed on me. Their expressions shifted, just for a second. It wasn't confusion. It was shock. And then, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. Koyama-san ignored Sterling completely. He looked directly at me, his gaze intense and searching, and spoke in rapid, formal Japanese, his tone sharp as a razor's edge. "You. I know you. You are the girl from the ramen shop in Misawa, General Williams's daughter." The blood drained from my face, and for a split second, the entire high-stakes corporate drama vanished. I wasn't Nia Williams, junior analyst, anymore. I was just Nia, the 14-year-old kid with frizzy hair who used to bike down to the little 8-seat ramen shop just outside Misawa Air Base for a bowl of the richest tonkotsu ramen you've ever tasted. Koyama-san, who owned a small electronics component factory back then, was a regular. He used to sit at the counter, always in the same seat, and talk to my father for hours about everything from fishing to the future of technology. I bowed deeply, a perfect, respectful 90-degree angle from the waist. "Koyama-sama," I replied in fluent, formal Japanese, my voice clear and steady. "It is an honor to see you again. My father sends his deepest regards. I had no idea Koyama Electronics had become the mighty Koyama Corporation. My sincerest congratulations on your success." A warm, genuine smile broke through Koyama-san's stony facade. The tension in his shoulders visibly eased. He responded in a much softer tone. "Your father, General Williams, is a man of great honor, the finest officer I have ever known. He spoke often of his brilliant daughter, who had a mind for numbers and a passion for our culture. I see he was not exaggerating." From the corner of my eye, I could see Mr. Sterling's face contorting with confusion and rage. He was completely lost, a king in his own castle who suddenly found himself unable to speak the language of the court. "What is she saying?" he hissed at Mark. "What's going on?" I straightened up and looked at Sterling, my expression unreadable. "Mr. Sterling, please allow me to handle this." I then turned back to Koyama-san, never breaking my respectful demeanor. Koyama-sama, I continued in Japanese, on behalf of this company, I must offer our most humble and profound apologies. Our communications have been clumsy and, frankly, insulting. It is a failure of our understanding, not our intent. We have been communicating like arrogant children, and you have every right to be offended. I have read the exchanges, and I am personally ashamed. The other Japanese delegates exchanged surprised glances. Koyama-san's eyebrows raised. No one from our side had ever admitted fault. They had only ever thrown more money and more arrogant demands at them. He studied me for a long moment. A failure of understanding, he mused in Japanese. That is a generous interpretation, Williams-san. We believed it was a failure of character. The character of our leadership does not reflect the dedication of the entire company, I said, choosing my words with surgical precision. We have brilliant people here who are deeply excited about the possibility of partnering with a visionary like yourself. They have simply been poorly represented. I saw a muscle twitch in Sterling's jaw. He knew I was talking about him. What the hell is going on? Sterling finally exploded, taking a step forward. Stop whispering in your secret language and tell me what you're doing. Koyama-san's warm expression vanished. He looked at Sterling with a renewed wave of icy disdain. He then looked back at me and said, in Japanese, "This man is the source of the problem, isn't he? He has the eyes of a greedy snake." My heart was pounding, but my mind was crystal clear. This was it. The entire game was on the line, right here. He is a difficult man, Koyama-sama, I admitted. But his signature is on the contract that could make both our companies billions. Koyama-san nodded slowly. Then his lips curved into a sly, cunning smile. He had seen the whole picture in a matter of minutes. The arrogant CEO, the floundering team, and the unexpected appearance of a bridge from his past. And he saw the piece of paper Sterling had slammed on the table. His assistant, who had been standing silently by the door, leaned in and whispered something in his ear. Her eyes flickered towards the note in my pocket. Of course, she understood English. She'd heard the whole insane bet. Koyama-san's smile widened. Oh, he was going to enjoy this. He held up a hand to silence his own delegation, who had started to murmur among themselves. He then took a deliberate step forward until he was standing in the center of the room, a titan of industry holding all the cards. He looked at me, then at the sputtering, purple-faced Mr. Sterling. For the first time since entering the room, Koyama-san spoke in English. His accent was slight, his diction perfect, and his voice carried an unmistakable weight of absolute power. "Mr. Sterling," he said, the words dropping like stones into the silent room, "we have reconsidered." A wave of relief washed over the faces of my colleagues. Sterling's chest puffed out, a triumphant smirk beginning to form on his lips. He thought he'd won. He thought my little parlor trick was over, and his authority was restored. "We will sign the deal," Koyama-san continued, letting the words hang in the air. Sterling's smirk widened into a full-blown predatory grin. He shot me a look that said, "You're finished." But Koyama-san wasn't done. He held Sterling's gaze, his eyes glinting like chips of obsidian. On one condition. The silence in the boardroom stretched for an eternity. Sterling's triumphant grin faltered, replaced by a guarded suspicion. "What condition?" he asked, his voice tight. Koyama-san's gaze shifted from Sterling and landed squarely on me. The intensity was immense, but there was a hint of amusement in his eyes, a shared secret between the two of us. "Our condition is simple," he announced to the room, his English precise and unwavering. "This deal, moving forward, will have one and only one point of contact. All communications, all strategy meetings, all executive decisions from your side must be routed through and approved by one person." He paused, letting the weight of his statement sink in. Sterling's face was a storm of conflicting emotions. He was losing control, and he knew it. He wanted to scream, but he was trapped by the multi-billion-dollar contract hanging in the balance. "And who would that be?" Sterling managed to grit out. Koyama-san's cunning smile returned, and he gestured gracefully towards me. "Her, Williams-san, the general's daughter. She's the only person in this room who has shown our company the slightest bit of intelligence and respect. She will be our sole liaison. If you agree to this, we sign today. If not, We walk. It was a masterstroke. A checkmate delivered with surgical precision. He wasn't just demanding I lead the project, he was fundamentally restructuring our side of the deal to make me the de facto executive in charge. He was giving me the power without Sterling having to explicitly hand it over. The room erupted in whispers. My colleagues stared at me, their faces a mixture of disbelief, awe, and for some, pure envy. Mark, the head of international relations, just looked relieved. Sterling, however, looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. His face was blotchy, his breathing ragged. He was being publicly castrated by the very man he had tried to swindle, and the instrument of his humiliation was a junior analyst he didn't even know the name of an hour ago. That's absurd, Sterling stammered. She's a data analyst. She has no authority, no experience. Koyama-san's expression hardened. She has my trust. That is the only authority that matters to me. Is that not correct, Williams-san? He asked, switching back to Japanese. It is more than I could have ever asked for, Koyama-sama, I replied, also in Japanese, bowing my head in gratitude. This back and forth in a language he couldn't understand was the final nail in Sterling's coffin. He was an outsider in his own boardroom, beaten. He looked around the room, searching for an ally, for someone to back his play, but no one would meet his eye. They had all seen his arrogance nearly sink the company, and they had all just watched me, a complete unknown, single-handedly pull them back from the brink. They knew which side their bread was buttered on. With a choked, strangled sound of pure fury, Sterling's shoulders slumped in defeat. He knew he had no choice. The board would crucify him if he let this deal walk away, now over a matter of pride. Fine, he spat, the word tasting like poison in his mouth. Fine. Koyama-san nodded once, a gesture of finality. Excellent. My assistant will arrange the signing with Williams-san. He then turned to me, his entire demeanor softening. In Japanese, he said, Your father taught you well. Honor is a currency more valuable than yen or dollars. Do not let these greedy men change you. I will not, Koyama-sama. Thank you, I replied. With that, the Japanese delegation turned and swept out of the room as gracefully as they had entered, leaving a stunned silence in their wake. For a moment, nobody moved. Then, slowly, as if waking from a dream, my colleagues began to process what had just happened. A few of them gave me small, tentative smiles. Mark gave me a subtle thumbs up. Then, all eyes turned to Mr. Sterling. He stood frozen, his hands clenched into white-knuckled fists at his sides. The deal was saved. The company was secure. And he had won nothing. In fact, he had lost everything. His authority was shattered. His respect was gone. And then there was the matter of the little piece of paper in my pocket. I walked calmly across the room, the click of my heels on the marble floor the only sound. I stopped in front of him, looking him directly in the eye. He refused to look at me, staring at a point on the wall just over my shoulder. I didn't say a word. I simply reached into my pocket, pulled out the note he had scribbled in a fit of rage, and unfolded it. I held it up between us. If Nia Williams successfully secures the Koyama Corp deal today, I, James Sterling, will tender my immediate resignation as CEO. His furious signature was like a slash across his own throat. He finally looked down at the paper, then up at me. His eyes were filled with a defeated, impotent hatred. The bet had been made. The conditions had been met. He had played a stupid, arrogant game, and he had lost spectacularly. Without a word, he turned, walked to the head of the table, and collected his personal tablet and portfolio. He didn't look at anyone. He just walked towards the double doors, a man hollowed out by his own hubris. As he passed me, he paused for a fraction of a second, and I heard him mutter, so low only I could hear it. You'll regret this. I didn't flinch. I just watched him go. I watched as the doors swung shut behind the man who thought a black girl from the data department was nothing more than a piece of furniture. The room was still silent, but it was a different kind of silence now. It was the quiet of a new beginning. I looked down at the signed resignation in my hand, then out at the stunned faces of the company's executive team. They were all looking at me, waiting. I took a deep breath and walked to the head of the table, to the CEO's chair. All right, I said, my voice ringing with a newfound authority I didn't know I possessed. Let's get to work.